philosophy had served Whitfield well. Quarterly profits continued to rise under his leadership, even as employee turnover reached record levels. Replaceable cogs in a profitable machine, he often said privately. That's all employees really are. The annual shareholders' meeting was Whitfield's moment to shine. Hundreds of investors gathered to hear him outline Horizon's stellar performance and ambitious future. Marcus had never attended one before. He'd never had reason to. But now, with Sophie's future dependent on those shares, he needed to understand what was happening with the company. He took the day off from his new job as a night shift programmer at a small startup. The pay was terrible, but they allowed him flexibility for Sophie's sake. He dropped his daughter at school with a promise to pick her up for ice cream later. Pinky swear, Daddy? Sophie held out her little finger, her mother's brown eyes staring up at him. Pinky swear, Princess, Marcus smiled, linking his finger with hers. And then we'll go to the park if you want. With the swings that go super high. The very ones. Sophie's face lit up, and for a moment, Marcus forgot about the shareholders' meeting, the financial stress, everything except his daughter's smile. The security guard at Horizon's headquarters eyed Marcus suspiciously as he presented his shareholder documentation. You don't look like our usual investors, the guard remarked, checking his list. I used to work here, Marcus explained. Early employee. The guard grunted, reluctantly waving him through. The meeting room was filled with business suits and expensive watches. Marcus felt painfully out of place in his only blazer, purchased years ago for job interviews. He found a seat in the back row, hoping to remain inconspicuous. Whitfield took the stage to thunderous applause, his expensive suit gleaming under the lights. Ladies and gentlemen, Horizon Technologies has had its most profitable year yet, he began, his voice booming with confidence. Our aggressive efficiency measures have cut costs while maximizing returns. For 45 minutes, Whitfield detailed the company's achievements, each slide more impressive than the last. Profit margins, market expansion, reduced overhead, it all sounded impressive, even to Marcus. Then came the Q&A session. We have time for a few questions, Whitfield announced, pointing to audience members with practiced precision. What's your outlook for the Asian market? How will the new product line affect next quarter's earnings? Any plans for acquisitions this year? Softball questions from friendly faces. Marcus listened as Whitfield handled each with smooth corporate speak. Then, almost without realizing it, Marcus raised his hand. To his surprise, Whitfield pointed to him. Perhaps he was curious about the unfamiliar face in the crowd. Yes, in the back. Marcus stood, heart pounding. Mr. Whitfield, I'm curious about the company's new efficiency measures regarding parental leave and flexible work arrangements. Studies show family-friendly policies actually increase productivity and retention. Isn't cutting these benefits short-sighted? The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Whitfield's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. And you are? Marcus Evans. Former software engineer, current shareholder. Whitfield chuckled, the sound echoing in the silent room. You? A shareholder? The laughter spread among the executives seated in the front row. How many shares do you own, Mr. Evans? 10. 20? Whitfield asked, drawing more laughter. Marcus felt his face burning. I was granted options as an early employee. I own 2,000 shares. Whitfield smirked. Well, Mr. Evans, while we appreciate your minimal investment, I assure you our board has thoroughly analyzed the impact of all policy changes. The numbers speak for themselves. He gestured toward the profit chart behind him. Now, if there are questions from significant shareholders. Actually, Marcus interrupted, surprising even himself with his boldness, I have documentation showing that family-friendly policies at our competitors have led to reduced turnover, saving millions in recruitment and training costs. Would you like to see the data? Whitfield's face darkened. Security, please escort this gentleman out. He's disrupting our meeting. Two security guards approached Marcus. I have every right to be here, Marcus protested. I'm a legitimate shareholder. A janitor with a few shares doesn't qualify you to question company policy, Whitfield sneered. Something snapped inside Marcus. 3 years of grief, struggle, and injustice boiled over. I helped build this company, he said, his voice rising. I wrote code that's still in your flagship products. I worked 80-hour weeks, sacrificed time with my family. And when my wife died and I needed support, this company threw me away like garbage. The room went deathly quiet. Do you know what it's like to tell your 5-year-old daughter that mommy isn't coming home? To work night shifts so you can take her to school in the morning? To choose between paying for ballet lessons or fixing the leaking roof? Marcus pulled out his phone, hands shaking. This is my daughter, Sophie. Everything I do, every share I hold, is for her future. So don't you dare tell me I don't have the right to question policies that hurt families like mine. He held up his phone, showing a picture of Sophie in her ballet costume, smiling despite her missing front tooth. For once, James Whitfield seemed at a loss for words. An elderly man in the second row stood up. I'd like to hear more about this research on family policies, young man. Marcus recognized him with a shock. William Chen, one of the largest individual investors in Horizon. Yes, said another shareholder, a woman in her 60s. I find this relevant to our long-term growth strategy. Whitfield tried to regain control. We need to move on with the agenda. I motion to allocate time to discuss the impact of employee policies on shareholder value, Chen announced formally. Second, called several voices. Whitfield's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is highly irregular. It's completely within procedure, Chen countered calmly. And as someone who holds 8% of this company, I believe I have the right to hear information relevant to my investment. What happened next would be talked about in business schools for years. For 2 hours, Marcus presented his research on how family-friendly policies affected bottom lines across the tech industry. He showed retention statistics, recruitment costs, productivity metrics. His years as an engineer had taught him to love data, and he'd spent months researching this topic while searching for a job that would accommodate his new life as a single father. William Chen asked pointed questions. Other major shareholders joined in. By the end, an impromptu committee had formed to review Horizon's employee policies. Young man, Chen said as the meeting broke up, you've given us much to think about. Would you be willing to consult on this committee? Marcus was stunned. I have a daughter. I can't commit to regular hours. Chen smiled. We'll work around your schedule. That's rather the point, isn't it? 3 months later, Marcus sat across from James Whitfield in the CEO's office. The atmosphere was tense. The board has reviewed the committee's findings, Whitfield said stiffly. They've decided to implement most of your recommendations. Marcus nodded, keeping his face neutral. That's good news for the company. They've also suggested creating a new position, Director of Employee Well-being. They want you for the job. Marcus couldn't hide his surprise. Me? Apparently, your perspective is valuable. Whitfield's tone made clear how he felt about this development. The salary is substantial. The hours are flexible. It was everything Marcus had dreamed of: meaningful work, financial security for Sophie, and time to be the father she needed. When would you want me to start? He asked. Whitfield's smile was razor-thin. The board suggested immediately. They feel we've lost too much talent already. 1 year later, Horizon Technologies was featured in Fortune magazine as one of the best places to work in America. Employee turnover had dropped by 60%. Recruitment costs had plummeted. And surprisingly to some, profits had continued to rise. Marcus's office was 3 doors down from Whitfield's. They weren't friends, would never be friends, but they had developed a wary professional respect. The board is pleased with the results, Whitfield admitted grudgingly during their quarterly review. Though I still think some of these policies are excessively generous. The numbers disagree with you, Marcus replied, sliding a report across the desk. We're actually outperforming our competitors who haven't adopted similar measures. Whitfield scanned the document, his frown deepening. Fine. But I still don't understand why we need an on-site childcare center. Come with me, Marcus said, standing up. Curious despite himself, Whitfield followed Marcus to the newly constructed wing of the building. Through a large window, they could see a bright, cheerful space where about 15 children played under the watchful eyes of professional caregivers. That's my Sophie, Marcus said, pointing to a dark-haired girl helping a younger child with a puzzle. She comes here after school. I can see her anytime. If she needs me, I'm 5 minutes away instead of across town. And this improves productivity how? Whitfield asked skeptically. I'm not constantly worried about her. I don't rush through work to make it to after-school pickup. I don't miss days when her regular childcare falls through. Multiply that by 50 employees with children here, and the productivity gains are substantial. As if sensing their presence, Sophie looked up and spotted her father. Her face broke into a radiant smile, Eliza's smile, and she waved enthusiastically. Marcus waved back, his heart full. To his astonishment, Whitfield raised his hand in a small wave too. She looks like a good kid, the CEO said quietly. The best, Marcus agreed. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the children play. My father worked 80 hours a week, Whitfield said suddenly. I barely knew him growing up. When he died, I realized I had no memories of him that weren't related to work or his absence. Marcus turned to look at the older man, seeing something vulnerable in his expression for the first time. It's not too late to create a different kind of company, Marcus said. One that values whole people, not just what they can produce. Whitfield didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice had lost its usual edge. The board wants to expand this program to our other offices. They've approved the budget. I'll need your recommendations on implementation by next month. It wasn't an apology or an admission that Marcus had been right all along. But from James Whitfield, it was something close. 5 years later, Marcus sat in a different boardroom. Sophie, now 13, waited outside with a book. They were going camping after this meeting, her idea, surprisingly. His tech-loving daughter had recently developed an interest in nature. All in favor of appointing Marcus Evans as the new CEO of Horizon Technologies, effective immediately? William Chen, now chairman of the board, asked. Every hand in the room rose. Even James Whitfield's, who had announced his retirement the month before. Congratulations, Mr. Evans, Chen said, smiling. Any remarks for the board? Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here. From grieving widower to unemployed father to shareholder activist to company executive. From barely staying afloat to creating change that affected thousands of families. I'm honored by your confidence, he began. And I promise to never forget what Horizon is truly made of, not products or profits, but people with lives and loves beyond these walls. After the meeting, Whitfield approached him. The years had softened the older man, though he remained formidable. Don't screw it up, Evans, he said gruffly, extending his hand. Marcus shook it firmly. I'll do my best. Your best was always irritatingly good, Whitfield admitted. Then, more quietly, she would be proud of you. Your wife. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his throat whenever Eliza was mentioned. Thank you. That means a lot. Outside the boardroom, Sophie jumped up from her seat. Dad. Are you done? Can we go now? I want to get to the campsite before dark. All done, Princess, Marcus said, hugging her. And guess what? I got the job. Sophie rolled her eyes in that particular way only teenagers can